Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going over the 2025 Wisconsin Supreme Court election, where in just 2 days it'll be having a very important election for a Supreme Court seat. I'm going to go over all the background information for you about this race, what is going on, and at the end of the video give my prediction for how I see this race going on Tuesday, April 1st. So for starters, this 2025 Wisconsin Supreme Court election will be held on April 1st, 2025 to elect a justice to the Wisconsin Supreme Court for a 10-year term. The incumbent justice, Ann Walsh Bradley, is retiring after 30 years on the court. Wisconsin Supreme Court justices are nonpartisan, but Bradley is identified as a liberal and has voted with the liberal majority 4-3 on the court, meaning the outcome of this election will decide the ideological majority of the court for at least the next year. By early March, the election had already become the most expensive judicial election in the United States history. With 2 weeks to go before the election, spending had topped $76 million and was projected to reach $100 million by Election Day. The in-person early voting period is going on at the time I'm recording this video right now from March 18th through March 30th. I'm recording this on March 30th as well, just for some hindsight. So a little bit of background on the information on the candidates and such. Wisconsin Supreme Court elections are officially nonpartisan, but news outlets have identified Susan Crawford as the liberal aligning candidate and Brad Schimel as the conservative Republican aligned candidate. Crawford, obviously the Democrat, Brad Schimel, the Republican. That helps to simplify things in terms of which candidate both parties are supporting. When it comes to advertising, both candidates and their respective supporters have spent heavily on advertising in this race, with total spending expected to top $100 million, doubling the previous spending record set by the previous Supreme Court election. So a lot of money is being thrown at this race. Both candidates have received heavy financial support from groups and individuals based outside of Wisconsin. Schimel has criticized Crawford for advertising spending sponsored by wealthy individuals like J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, and George Soros, while Crawford has criticized the involvement of billionaire Elon Musk and his support of Schimel. As Musk has been taking a very public role with the Trump administration, his involvement in this race has drawn a lot of attention and such, and helping of Schimel. And obviously Musk being a part of Doge has only really heightened things. Musk and his groups tied to Schimel have spent more than $20 million on television and digital advertisements and funding campaign field operations. And Musk-funded group is linked to misleading ads designed to appear as if they came from Democrats, portraying Crawford as excessively progressive. That link was coming from, the AP News and from Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Musk has additionally funded a petition drive offering financial compensation to voters who declare their opposition to, quote, activist judges, a similar tactic he employed during the 2024 election. Shortly before the election, Musk offered to personally hand over checks of $1 million each to two voters who had already cast their ballots. Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul sued Musk to block the payments, decrying them as violations of state election law, and as of the time I'm recording this video, litigation is still ongoing. Multiple news sources have noted that Musk's involvement in the race began shortly after Tesla, which Musk owns, filed a lawsuit against a Wisconsin law which bars them from operating car dealerships in the state. So, not only is this Supreme Court election very important, but it also seems that for Musk, there may be a personal aspect involved in this as well. As for the campaigning, it's really not too surprising. A lot of this is typical Republican versus Democrat campaigning. Schimel's campaign has gone after Crawford for being soft on crime, drawing particularly her attention to sentencing choices in child sexual assault cases during her tenure as a judge, in which Crawford applied sentences well below the maximum allowed. Republicans have also accused Crawford of selling to U.S. House seats to the Democrats in exchange for their support, referencing ongoing redistricting litigation. Republicans claiming essentially that if Crawford wins, she'll help the liberal Supreme Court in Wisconsin gerrymander two congressional seats to the Democrats for the next election, 2026, and going forward. Schimel's campaign has specifically attacked comments made by U.S. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, calling for Crawford's victory to facilitate the redrawing of the state's congressional districts. And just to give you an idea of which districts these are, I'll show you here on the 2024 House map. They're specifically referencing gerrymandering Wisconsin District 3, which Derek Van Orden, the Republican, won by only about 2 points, roughly a little under 12,000 votes, about 11,200 or so to get specific. and Wisconsin District 1. These were the two districts Republicans are particularly worried about Crawford and the Supreme Court in Wisconsin potentially redrawing. Let's see here. Schimel has also actively curried the favor of President Trump at more private events, telling election canvassers he'll be a support network for the president. Despite this, Schimel has repeated that financial or political support from figures such as Musk and Trump will not influence his decisions on the court. He's also repeated the talking points related to conspiracy theories surrounding voter fraud regarding the city of Milwaukee's counting of absentee ballots. On the Democratic side of things, on the Crawford campaign, Crawford has spent much political energy going after Elon Musk's involvement in the race, claiming he is trying to buy the Supreme Court seat. At the same time, she has faced scrutiny over her own financial backing, where in January 2025, she drew criticism for attending a briefing linked to a Democratic donors, with opponents arguing it signaled a partisan approach to the judiciary. Crawford has received over $1 million in campaign donations from billionaire Soros, as well as financial support from other Democratic figures like J.B. Pritzker. Crawford has also attacked Schimel for his tenure as Attorney General of Wisconsin, including the high number of untested rape kits early in his tenure. Schimel has countered these attacks by noting the backlog was created by the end of his term, which ended after he lost the 2018 election. In addition to her financial support from figures such as Soros and Pritzker, Crawford has received additional campaign support from state and national Democrats. This includes the operation of a People vs. Musk campaign throughout the state meant to highlight opposition to the billionaire's actions and the Trump administration is involvement in the race. It also is worth noting that Tim Walz, the Democratic nominee for vice president in 2024 and governor of Minnesota, also held events in Wisconsin in support of Crawford. And I mean, yes, when you think about this, obviously this is about the state of Wisconsin and the Supreme Court race in the state, but really from a national standpoint, this is the first big sort of test and litmus test of the Trump administration and the Democrats' response to the Trump administration. That's why you're seeing millions of dollars be poured into Wisconsin, which on its own, Wisconsin is a very important state at the electoral level. It's a very important swing state, one of the closest swing states in the country in 2024 and 2020 and 2016. So it's getting a precedent for very close presidential races. The Senate and governor's races have been equally as close. So Wisconsin's a very important electoral state, but it's also worth noting that April 1st is the first big election in Wisconsin, as well as two special elections in Florida, which I'll be doing in a future video as well, talking about those. This is a very, very important litmus test for both the Democrats and the Republicans. The Democrats want to show that they're fighting back against Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and that the party is energized, it's rejuvenated, and it's ready to build momentum going into the 2025 governor elections in Virginia and New Jersey, and then going into the 2026 midterm elections, fired up and ready to go, and ready to win back Senate seats, House seats, governor's mansions, and all the such. Republicans are wanting to show that the 2024 election was not a fluke. The 2024 election, which put Donald Trump in the White House and put his agenda going, in which Wisconsin, as a part of that agenda, voted for President Trump. So it's not like this is a Democratic state where the Republicans are trying to get a Supreme Court judge on the ballot in a Democratic state. No, Wisconsin voted very narrowly for Donald Trump by 49.7% to 48.8%. So Wisconsin helped Donald Trump get in office in the 2024 election. So Republicans are trying to be very, very firm on this and give another Republican advantage in the state of Wisconsin, the Supreme Court, no doubt. But this is also would be a very big win for the Trump administration, for Elon Musk, and for the Republicans in Wisconsin who going into 2026 are going to try and flip the governor's mansion and I believe maybe flip a few House seats as well if they can get a very good night. So this is very important for both national parties, probably equally as important for both state parties as well. Obviously, being such a big national talked about race from the Democrats and Republicans, there have been some pretty high notable endorsements in the race. For Susan Crawford, the Democratic line candidate, she's got the endorsements of Eric Holder, the former U.S. Attorney General under President Obama. She's gotten the endorsement of President Obama himself. Democratic Senator of Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin. Amy Klobuchar, Democratic Senator of Minnesota. Obviously, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, which I mentioned earlier. All the liberal-aligned candidates of the Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin, including the outgoing Ann Walsh Bradley. She has also endorsed Crawford as well. Other individuals, you have John Bowman, Harry Dunn, Ken Martin, George Soros, Minnie Tamarju, Ben Wickler, and numerous labor unions and newspapers, organizations, political parties, and such, and so forth. For Schimel, very equally as big names, he has Elon Musk and Donald Trump on his side. U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, the Republican senator from Wisconsin, has endorsed him. A lot of Republican representatives from the state of Wisconsin, like Scott Fitzgerald, Glenn Grothman, Brian Steele, Tom Tiffany, Derek Van Orden, Tony Weed. Judicial officials: Maria Lazar, a Wisconsin Court of Appeals judge, Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump Jr., and a bunch of labor organizations and unions as well. So the endorsements have raked up on both sides, and this is going to be a very classic, very, very competitive Republican versus Democratic race on that front. Both of them did do a debate on March 12th, 2025. I am looking at this on Wikipedia, but they do have a link to the debate on YouTube if you would like to check that out as well. As for the polling that's been done in this race is very, very interesting because all the polling so far, all the polling I've seen, have all been conducted by Republican internal polling. I don't think I've ever seen that before, where there hasn't been one poll from like a Wisconsin local newspaper or something like that of that nature. Maybe it comes out after I finish recording this video, but there's usually a polling source from either a left-wing pollster or a quote-unquote nonpartisan pollster that has come out, but so far nothing. There's only been Republican-aligned pollsters, and in these polls so far, it actually shows Susan Crawford, the Democrat, leading over Brad Schimel, the Republican, in every single poll, except for about 4 polls, where 2 of them show that Schimel and Crawford are tied, and the earliest 2 polls showed Schimel narrowly ahead. But the recent trend, really for the entire month of March, has either had Crawford ahead or in one on-message poll on March 9th to 10th, a tied race. The most recent poll from SoCal Strategies, the most recent one to go off of, had Crawford leading Schimel 50-42 and 46-40. The big key in this race is going to be, right now, all the polling data that has been done, again, how reliable is it going to be with all Republican biased polls, very small sample sizes, who knows? But it seems there's an advantage for Susan Crawford going into the election. The Republican enthusiasm has not been very high on Schimel's side. Schimel's only gotten up in the mid-40s twice in these polls, one at 47%, one at 45%, whereas Crawford has been averaging around 46, 47, 48% in a lot of these polls. And one comparison I made in a prior video is this actually reminds me a bit of the 2024 Nevada Senate race, where in all the polls, Jackie Rose, the Democratic incumbent, was averaging around 47, 48%, and her Republican opponent, Sam Brown, was around 43%. And then what happened on Election Day was Jackie Rosen got around 47% or so. Sam Brown got up to 46%, but a lack of enthusiasm on the Republican side for the candidate ended up not being enough to overtake the lead that the Democrat already built up. And I'm kind of seeing a similar path in this race right now. Obviously, in these special elections, it's all about turnout because typically in off-year elections, meaning even the midterm elections don't get a ton of turnout, but especially off-year elections like this one, right after the 2024 presidential race, a huge percentage of Wisconsin's population is probably not going to turn out for this election. A lot of them may not even know this is going on. So whichever side can get more of their voters out to vote is going to be the one that wins this race. Right now, everything I've seen does show the Democrats are the ones who are more motivated and fired up to get out to vote. I know Elon Musk and President Trump and a lot of Republicans in the last few days and few weeks have been trying to move the Republicans, get them energized, get them to go out and vote, get them to go knock on doors and such. But right now, everything I've seen shows the Democrats having an early lead and early advantage going into Election Day in the state of Wisconsin. So now we get to the tough part and the fun part for me is what is my prediction for this race? And as I mentioned, my example is the Nevada Senate race from 2024, where I think a lot of the polling data so far that we have to go off of, because right now for this, all we really have to go off of is the early polling data. And I said it resembled the Nevada Senate race. And what ended up happening in that Nevada Senate race was we ended up seeing a very close election in Nevada, but Jackie Rosen won by about 1.7%, and it was a under 50% of the vote win. Is Wisconsin going to be an exact replica of that? I'm not honestly too sure, but I think right now Crawford over Schimel in the state of Wisconsin, I do think Crawford has the advantage going into the race. The question is going to be the margin of victory in this. Is it possible Republicans get enough voters out to vote to win this race? It is. But right now, I think Crawford's in a pretty good position for re-election. I think Crawford does win the state of Wisconsin, and I think she wins it in a likely Democratic margin, which means I have her winning by more than 5 points. but I have her also winning by under 15 points. If you want to get really specific, I think she's going to win somewhere around 6 to 6.5%. That's what I have her winning as right now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like. Please remember to click subscribe. Leave a comment below telling me your thoughts. Who do you think is going to win this election and who you are supporting if you are from the state of Wisconsin in this election. Make sure to click subscribe as I post at least one new video every single day that you're not going to want to miss. That'll do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.